Sweat trickled down David's forehead, a 48-year-old man, as the mortgage envelope slipped through his trembling fingers. His house in Ohio, once a symbol of his stability and success, with its well-kept lawn and the porch swing that promised peaceful summers, was now a cruel reminder of the financial abyss opening beneath his feet. That Tuesday morning, with the pale winter light streaming through the kitchen window and revealing dust particles suspended in the air, brought not the promise of a new day, but the crushing weight of an uncertain future. He never imagined that middle age, a phase so celebrated in American culture as the professional peak and the consolidation of family life, would find him on the brink of bankruptcy, a silent nightmare that haunts millions of Americans, often hidden beneath the facade of a prosperous and successful life. Anxiety was a knot in his stomach, so tight it made breathing difficult, a dark premonition of everything at stake: his family's security, his children's education, his own dignity, and the legacy of a lifetime of hard work that seemed to be crumbling before his eyes. The paper in his hands was not just a bill. It was a verdict, and David felt the ground give way beneath him. David watched the raindrops slowly slide down the window of his home office, where his computer screen displayed disheartening financial graphs in vivid red. Just a few months ago, the unexpected layoff from his sales manager position, after 20 years of uninterrupted dedication to the same tech company in Cleveland, threw him into a whirlwind of uncertainty and despair that he had never experienced. He realized through his exhaustive internet research that he was not alone in this desolate situation. In the United States, middle-age unemployment is, in fact, one of the primary catalysts for personal bankruptcy, especially for those who, like David, haven't built a robust financial safety net over the years. Recent data from the Consumer Bankruptcy Project reveals that adults over 45 represent a significant and growing portion of bankruptcy filings. He realized that a lack of financial literacy was a common and tragic thread among all the bankruptcy stories he encountered. Many, like him, simply lacked the basic tools or practical knowledge to manage their finances effectively and intelligently. Excessive spending, driven by a voracious consumer culture and the ease of credit available on every corner and online ad, became an almost inescapable trap for most. He vividly remembered buy now, pay later promotions that seemed harmless at the time of purchase, but, when added up, created an invisible and unsustainable mountain of financial obligations. The absence of a clear and detailed budget, and the inability to distinguish between genuine needs and ephemeral wants, contributed to the total loss of control over his finances. The transition to bankruptcy, he concluded bitterly, is often not a single, sudden event, but the insidious and gradual result of a series of suboptimal financial decisions. A lack of discipline, and an inability to adapt to life's unforeseen circumstances, something most middle-aged Americans dangerously underestimate, mistakenly believing that stability is guaranteed forever. This painful self-awareness of his own responsibility was the first incredibly difficult, but absolutely necessary step towards change and the rebuilding of his financial life. A bitter reflection of the difficulty in re-entering the job market after a certain age when living costs remain high but opportunities decrease. The lack of an emergency fund, which should ideally cover 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, is a common vulnerability among the American middle class, who often live on the brink of financial collapse. In David's case, his living expenses, always high and without much control or planning, were never adjusted for the real and imminent possibility of an income interruption. Furthermore, credit card debt, accumulated over the years with Florida vacation trips, impulsive purchases, and home renovations that seemed essential at the time, now felt like an uncontrollable and insatiable monster, devouring his ability to breathe financially. He recalled a recent Northwestern Mutual study indicating that personal debt is the biggest financial concern for the vast majority of Americans, even surpassing the lack of retirement savings, which is an alarming sign. As David digested the harsh reality of his situation, with the weight of the world on his shoulders, he searched online for similar stories, finding a universe of pain, regret, and perseverance. He read about Sarah, a dedicated 52-year-old nurse from Los Angeles, whose financial life was abruptly destabilized by unexpected medical expenses after a severe car accident. Even with a good health insurance plan offered by her employer, the copayments, high deductibles, and the long and complex recovery from multiple surgeries forced her to use all her hard-earned savings and ultimately to take out loans that quickly became unmanageable. Medical debt is, indeed, one of the primary and most cruel causes of personal bankruptcy in the U.S., affecting millions of families annually, according to alarming reports from the Kaiser Family Foundation, which show that even insured individuals can be devastated by catastrophic healthcare costs. Another disturbing factor for David, which made him reflect on his own choices, was the lack of retirement planning, a widespread error he himself had made, prioritizing the present. He always prioritized immediate consumption and the lifestyle he considered deserved after years of hard work, instead of long-term investments in his 401 and other retirement savings accounts. Research from the Federal Reserve demonstrates that a large portion of Americans do not have enough retirement savings, which makes them extremely vulnerable to financial shocks in middle age, as the ability to recover and generate new income drastically decreases as one approaches retirement age, turning the future into a terrifying unknown. As David tried to understand where he had gone wrong and how so many others fell into the same financial trap, the feeling of drowning was a constant and suffocating reality in David's life. His nights were short and restless, filled with thoughts of his overdue mortgage in Ohio, the utility bills piling up on his dining room table, and the incessant collection calls he avoided answering. It was then, in a moment of near total despair and at the insistent suggestion of a friend who had been through a similar situation, that he decided to seek professional help, swallowing his pride. The first and most crucial action he took was debt renegotiation. He scheduled a consultation with a reputable nonprofit credit counseling agency in his city, a valuable resource often underutilized by many indebted individuals who. He devoured books on personal finance by renowned American authors like Sue Zorman and Robert Kiyosaki, watched enlightening documentaries, and participated in online seminars on financial management. He discovered practical concepts like the debt snowball method, where you pay off the smallest debt first to gain psychological momentum and motivation, or the debt avalanche, which focuses on debts with the highest interest rates to save more money in the long run. He understood, viscerally, that his relationship with money needed to fundamentally change from one of impulsive consumption to one of respect and responsibility. It wasn't just about having more, but about better managing what he had and making conscious, intelligent financial choices. Financial re-education became a daily habit, an undeniable priority in his new routine. This shift in mindset, from an impulsive and carefree consumer to a conscious, disciplined, and proactive manager, was the most challenging, but also the most rewarding. In just 6 months, David and Emily had paid off a significant credit card debt, and the financial pressure on them considerably decreased, allowing them to breathe again. Recovery wasn't instant, but the path was laid out, and the sense of control, once lost and distant, began to return, replacing despair with palpable hope and cautious optimism. He realized that getting out of the hole wasn't just a matter of cold numbers on a spreadsheet, but of discipline, resilience, self-awareness, and, above all, a new life perspective based on solid financial principles. Due to shame, lack of knowledge, or fear of judgment, failed to seek this vital support. There, an experienced and compassionate counselor helped him devise a debt management plan, where all his unsecured debts, such as high-interest credit cards and personal bank loans, were consolidated into a single monthly payment, often with drastically reduced interest rates. This immediately relieved the pressure of multiple collection calls and, most importantly, stopped the vicious cycle of abusive interest that trapped him. David learned that proactive and honest communication with creditors is fundamental, and that many financial institutions are willing to work with debtors to avoid full bankruptcy, as it's a costly process for everyone involved. He wasn't begging, but rather seeking a mutual and sustainable solution, something most people are unaware of when facing financial desperation, preferring to hide the problem rather than confront it head-on. The second step, after the initial relief of having a plan, was a radical and uncompromising financial reorganization. With the tireless help of the credit counselor, David created a detailed and meticulous budget, something he had never seriously done in his entire adult life. Every incoming and outgoing dollar was painstakingly mapped, categorized, and questioned. He mercilessly cut unnecessary expenses, the expensive gym membership he rarely used, dining out at sophisticated restaurants in downtown Cleveland, the multiple unnecessary streaming subscriptions he had accumulated. His wife, Emily, who initially resisted the idea of such severe belt-tightening, realized the gravity of the situation and fully joined him on the journey, becoming an essential partner. They started cooking more at home, planning meals and saving significantly, using public transportation whenever possible, and seeking free or low-cost entertainment, such as walks in local parks and visits to public libraries. It was painful at first, a drastic and uncomfortable lifestyle change. But each week that their account balance wasn't negative, a small victory was celebrated, fueling hope and motivation. This restructuring allowed David to identify areas where money was being wasted and to redirect those funds towards accelerating debt payments and, most importantly, towards building a small emergency fund, which had previously seemed an unattainable dream. Recent data from respected financial consultancies show that creating a rigorous budget and consistently adhering to it are the most effective steps to regain financial control and build solid foundation. Finally, David began a continuous and profound process of re-educating his spending habits and his entire mindset towards money. David's journey was far from over, but he felt a clarity and a sense of purpose he'd never had before in his financial life. His traumatic near-bankruptcy experience made him realize the crucial importance of preventive financial education, something most American schools still neglect, leaving millions of young adults unprepared for the real world of finance. He deeply regretted not learning these lessons sooner, as many of his mistakes, they had never realistically projected their future expenses, nor considered the corrosive impact of inflation or the inevitable changes in life priorities, such as their children's college education or their own retirement. The purchase of their Ohio home, though an American dream for many, he had used credit as an illusory extension of his income, a way to buy what he wanted without having the cash, and not as a convenience tool for temporary payments. The ease of buying and paying in multiple installments, encouraged by aggressive marketing campaigns, created a false sense of wealth and available funds, which quickly spiraled into an uncontrollable snowball of exorbitant interest and minimum payments. He recalled a shocking statistic from the Federal Reserve. The average credit card debt per U.S. household amounts to thousands of dollars, a heavy burden on household finances and a constant source of stress. The lesson was harsh but clear. Use credit wisely and sparingly. Pay the full balance each month to avoid interest. And, above all, avoid the temptation to accumulate unnecessary debt to maintain an unsustainable lifestyle. Financial education for David wasn't just about cold numbers and complex spreadsheets, but about changing his entire mindset towards money, transforming it from an enemy that caused anxiety and insomnia into a powerful tool for building security, freedom, and peace of mind. He now felt more prepared to face future financial challenges and, most importantly, to avoid falling into the same traps that almost led him to ruin. sharing his discoveries with Emily so that, together, they could build a more resilient and financially secure future. And a sign of status left them trapped with a mortgage that became an overwhelming burden when their income drastically decreased. Recent research from Bankrate, a leading source of financial data in the U.S., shows that a large percentage of Americans, more than half, live paycheck to paycheck without any ability to plan for the future, making them extremely vulnerable to any economic shock. David learned, through hard experience, that it is vital to create a realistic and detailed budget, review it monthly, and adjust it as income and expenses change over time. He also began avidly researching retirement planning, a topic he had ignored for decades, preferring immediate consumption gratification. He discovered the critical importance of contributing to a 401 or IRA as early as possible, harnessing the exponential and magical power of compound interest, which makes money work for you. The regret of not starting earlier was immense, an emotional burden, but he refused to dwell in lament, transforming frustration into motivation to act now. And the traps he fell into could have been avoided with basic, yet fundamental, knowledge of personal financial management. One of the most common and devastating mistakes he identified, and which led him to the financial precipice, was the lack of a robust and well-established emergency fund. When he suddenly lost his job in Cleveland, the non-existent financial cushion forced him to resort to expensive, high-interest debt to cover basic family expenses, creating a vicious cycle of despair. Personal finance experts like the popular and influential Dave Ramsey reiterate that having 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved in a separate, easily accessible account is the first and most vital line of defense against unforeseen events like sudden unemployment, serious illness, or unexpected and costly home or car repairs. David now had a clear and non-negotiable goal: to build this fund with discipline and consistency, sacrificing immediate and superfluous spending to ensure his family's future security. He realized that most people neglect this crucial step, assuming, with a dangerously naive optimism and "it won't happen to me" mentality, that unexpected expenses won't happen to them until it's too late. Another grave mistake David and Emily made for years, absorbed in their routine and social expectations, was underestimating the cost of living and inadequate long-term financial planning. Finally, David understood the treacherous trap of excessive debt, especially with credit cards, which seemed like an invisible enemy to him. The drastic expense restructuring was a crucial and painful step for David, who felt the weight of every cut, but he knew that simply cutting expenses wouldn't be enough to accelerate his financial recovery and build a solid future, free from the constant threat of debt. It was time to actively explore strategies for extra income, a growing necessity for millions of Americans seeking stability and the ability to achieve their dreams. With the help of online mentors and by exploring communities of freelancers and digital entrepreneurs, David discovered that he could monetize his skills and vast professional experience. He began offering part-time sales consulting to local small businesses and startups in the Cleveland area, using his 20 years of expertise in the field to help other entrepreneurs grow. The vibrant and ever-expanding gig economy in the United States offers numerous opportunities for anyone looking to supplement their income. From driving for ride-sharing apps like Uber or Lyft to creating digital content teaching online, providing specialized services through platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, or even making deliveries. Aware that financial shortcuts often lead to traps and losses, David found that he didn't immediately need a full-time formal job to generate significant additional cash flow. As if he were building a house brick by brick, he dedicated a few hours a week, and the extra money, even if modest at first, made a substantial difference in the pace of paying off his most burdensome debts and in building his emergency fund, which now grew steadily and systematically. The flexibility of extra income also relieved the immediate pressure to find a new permanent job. allowing him to choose with more calm and strategy without the desperation of accepting just anything. Even with limited capital, gave David a sense of control and optimism he hadn't felt in a long time. Brick by brick, with intelligence and dedication. In addition to generating extra income, David began to cautiously and determinedly delve into the world of smart investments, a universe that previously seemed complex, inaccessible, and exclusive to the wealthy. He had always thought that investing was solely for Wall Street and millionaires, but he discovered that with the right education and approach, it was accessible to anyone willing to learn and be consistent. Where the primary focus was still financial recovery and solidifying his foundation, and the importance of diversification to mitigate risks, the famous rule of not putting all your eggs in one basket, and long-term patience and not trying to get rich quick with risky speculations and wild promises. He avoided the volatile cryptocurrency market and guaranteed investment schemes that promised exorbitant returns overnight. His strategy was long-term, focused on the gradual and secure building of wealth. He also began to explore, for a near and more stable future, the possibility of passive income through other avenues, such as investing in real estate through REITs, or even creating a digital product that could generate revenue without his constant involvement. Although these were more distant goals, the mere fact of having a plan and knowledge about them empowered him and gave him a clear vision of a more promising and debt-free financial future. The combination of generating extra income to accelerate debt payments and initiating smart investments. Financial recovery wasn't just about surviving the crisis, but about building a solid and sustainable path to future prosperity. He started with the basics, understanding the fundamental difference between stocks and bonds. He chose to invest small amounts consistently in ETFs, which offer instant diversification by grouping various companies and are passively managed, minimizing fees and the need for daily monitoring and in-depth market knowledge. This invest and forget approach perfectly suited his current situation. David realized that the key to smart investments, especially during his recovery phase, was consistency, unwavering discipline. David's journey back to financial stability was arduous and filled with sacrifices, a true test of his resilience. But every step, every expense cut, every extra hour of work taught him valuable and invaluable lessons. Now, his primary focus was not just to climb out of the hole of debt and despair, but to ensure, with all his might and with a new mindset, that he would never fall back into it again. He understood that maintaining financial security is a continuous and dynamic process, a lifelong commitment and not a final destination to be reached and then forgotten. They didn't stop learning after the crisis. On the contrary, they intensified their efforts. They read finance books they never would have touched before, followed specialized podcasts, participated in online seminars on smart investing and planning, and even enrolled in community courses on tax optimization and estate planning, topics they had previously completely ignored, finding them too complex or boring. Debt, once a constant source of anguish and sleepless nights in their lives, became an enemy to be avoided at all costs, a lesson learned through much suffering. They began to use credit cards with extreme responsibility and intelligence, paying the full balance each month and treating it strictly as a tool of convenience, not a source of borrowing. The culture of impulsive consumption and instant gratification was replaced by a mindset of delayed gratification, smart investments, and long-term wealth building. David's story wasn't about a magic solution that appeared out of nowhere, or a stroke of luck, but about the profound and gradual transformation of habits, mindset, and priorities. He understood, with the wisdom of experience and the humility of someone who had made mistakes, that true financial security lies not only in the size of a bank account, but in the ability to manage money intelligently, adapt to unexpected challenges, and, above all, to continuously learn and evolve. His future, once uncertain and bleak, now seemed not only secure, but promising and full of possibilities, built on the solid foundations of discipline, knowledge, and a newfound resilience. The first and most important strategy he implemented, permanently and routinely, was the periodic and rigorous review of his budget. Every quarter, he and Emily would sit down together, armed with spreadsheets and a cup of coffee, to meticulously analyze their expenses, income sources, and short and long-term financial goals. This disciplined practice helped them quickly identify deviations from the original plan, adjust priorities as life changed, and ensure they were consistently on the right track. Research from Ramsey Solutions, one of the leading authorities on personal finance in the U.S., indicates that families who adhere to a budget and review it regularly are far more likely to achieve their financial goals and avoid debt. This financial discipline, once non-existent and viewed as a cage, was now an unshakable pillar of their new reality, a true liberation. David also prioritized, above all else, the creation and continuous strengthening of a substantial and untouchable emergency fund. After his devastating experience with sudden unemployment, which caught him completely by surprise, he knew that life is unpredictable and that unforeseen events happen to anyone, at any time, without warning. He and Emily set an ambitious goal of having the equivalent of 6 months of essential expenses saved in a high-yield savings account, separate from their checking and investment accounts, as if it were a sacred vault. This fund was not for risky investments or for fulfilling dreams, but for peace of mind and security in times of unexpected crisis. Furthermore, they began to actively explore income diversification, even with David having secured a new well-paying job at a tech company. Emily, for example, who had always enjoyed crafts and had a natural talent for creation, started a small online business selling handmade jewelry, which provided her not only significant supplementary income, but also a creative outlet and a sense of purpose. Having multiple income streams offers an extra layer of security and resilience, protecting them should one source fail or diminish. The Federal Reserve Board frequently highlights the importance of diversifying assets and income for the financial resilience of American families, especially in uncertain and volatile economic scenarios. Finally, David and Emily committed to continuous and lifelong financial education, transforming it into a habit and a pleasure.